It's 1911, the north of Italy, and Pietro has lost two of the most important things in his life, and the third, his music, is hanging by a thread. Pietro seeks a new start in America, and he comes to the coal mines of Pennsylvania, where his clarinetist's hands blister and the coal dust ebbs his clarinetist's breath. But then the beautiful voice of Assunta begins to inspire the music once more. From Ashes a Song is the true story of three people who immigrated from Italy to the United States 90 years before I did. I learned about their story from Pietro's daughter, Irene Smelnicki. I'd recently moved to the US. I grew up in the UK, but I lived in Italy for over a decade before I came to America. And I landed in a small coal mining town in rural Pennsylvania because of my husband's work. It really wasn't the America that I'd expected to find, but I was fascinated by how it brimmed with history and with nostalgia for the past. In its heyday, everybody here was an immigrant, and everybody has such pride in the story of their heritage. Everyone has a story to share. Irene's story hooked me from the beginning. Her dad was a musician. He was a brilliant clarinetist and a composer, and he was also a coal miner, which is a really compelling combination. And there's an intriguing love story too. Irene had often thought that her parents' lives were the stuff of novels, and she generously agreed for me to use the story. The research process was quite glorious. It centered around afternoon teas, and we would pore over photographs and leaf through music written by Pietro. We took day trips to towns where her parents' lives had led them here in Pennsylvania. So Vintondale, Ebensburg, Ernest, and Indiana. We even took an epic trip to Italy in 2009. So here we are in Bussolengo, which is near Verona. Bussolengo is where Assunta and Nandi grew up. And here we are with Susan on the left, and then Gilberto, who is related to Nandi, and there is Irene on the right. Here we are near San Damiano d'Asti, where Pietro grew up, and we're with Teresina and Maggiorino, who are related to Pietro. The real Pietro was a brilliant musician. Everyone called him Maestro. He played the clarinet, and when the polka would come on at events where he was playing, instead of getting up to dance like people normally would, everybody would stop. They would stop dancing, they would stop talking, they would stop drinking, whatever they were doing, because they knew a solo was coming, and it was worth hearing Pietro's solo every time. He also composed music. If you look at the cover of the book, you can see handwritten notes, and these are notes actually written by Pietro, and we think he wrote them in about 1926. Pietro also used to compose songs for Irene to sing in public at local events, and she even won a talent contest singing one of the songs he wrote. And everyone used to call her the Shirley Temple of Culver. So Pietro is an ordinary man with an extraordinary gift. The fictional Pietro is not limited by what might seem obvious, namely a difficult way of life in a coal mining town where knowledge is limited and where everybody is struggling to set down roots far, far from home. In the story, Pietro struggles with his gift for music because he doesn't believe in its power to transform other people. It's only when he's had to dig really deep and find the courage to embrace his music does he find that power to write the music that he was always meant to write. I began writing From Ashes to Song in 2008, and it was published in 2021. Over the course of these many years, it's had many titles, and one of my favorites was Sotto Voce, because it really captures the way Pietro lived his life, and it also sets a musical tone. But it was rather obscure, so at some point we found the title From Ashes to Song. And for me, the title really carries the right sense of hope. Ashes refers to the vineyard that is burned at the beginning of the story to stop the spread of a deadly disease that's attacking the vineyards. Later in the story, when Pietro has lost just about everything that's important to him, he remembers how burning the vines signified a cleansing, a new start. He decides to burn some papers when he, at last, finds the courage to take control of his life and his music. Some of the most rewarding feedback I've received so far about From Ashes to Song is that it has inspired other people to talk about their family stories with their loved ones. It's so important to know where we came from. Knowing the stories of our grandparents and great-grandparents can really help put our own lives in perspective. Assunta has a joyful soul and a big heart, but life throws challenge after challenge at her, and eventually she crumbles under its weight. One thing that keeps her going is growing dahlias, and I love flowers, I love gardening, and so I love this part of Assunta. I like this bit I'm about to read because Assunta is discovering dahlias for the first time, and also it's a very important moment between her and Mrs. Conati. For a lack of willpower to continue ignoring Mrs. Conati's instructions rather than for intention, Assunta sank to her knees and began to dig, sticking the trowel in tentatively at first, then attacking it with more conviction, turning a dull and barren patch of dirt into the bed where they'd plant life. The physical effort made her feel alive for the first time since Mary wasn't. Nandy is a bit of a scoundrel. He certainly wouldn't win any Husband of the Year awards. He and Pietro are friends, but they have a complicated relationship. I really like this scene in the book when Pietro is trying to help Nandy, who's had a few too many at the bar, and the tension between them has been rising, and even though he still can't admit it out loud, Nandy's insecurities are getting the best of him. Nandy let himself be led for a while, but then he stopped. Pietro tugged, but he could only steady him, not make him move. Tell you what, musician, good man for tooting, if anything happens to me, when it happens to me, you should be the one. Just as I decided back then on the ship. Walk. You need to get home before the police throw you in the slammer. No, musician man, you'll do it. His voice trailed off, so Pietro had no idea what he would do. Just move, Pietro tugged. Nandy began to sing. Shh, the police, I'll leave you here. Nandy sang louder and carried on singing the whole tug and drag way to his house. Pietro pushed him as far up the porch as he could, then collapsed him in a heap. He rapped 3 times sharply on the door, then turned, slapping his hands together to wash them of Nandy. You can learn more about me and about From Ashes to Song on my website, hilaryhauck.com. And please do follow me on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. I hope you'll sign up for my newsletter, #StoryEverywhere, where I explore the extraordinary lives of the ordinary things around us and I share author news.